Thank you for tuning in. We are going to be covering a lot of crazy cool information on this video, but I want to start by giving away this beginner kit that we went over in our last video. So, drum roll to our winner, giving this away to a subscriber. So, stay tuned for future videos. We're going to have a lot more giveaways. Congratulations to our winner. Email me below and I will get this kit out to you so you can start catching some of this before Christmas. Alright guys, now into the content. The most asked question we've had lately on our videos is, can you make a video that showcases where to go find steelhead? Well, we're going to start with this one. It's going to be a two-part series where I'm going to dive into, in this video, where to find the rivers that have steelhead to give you the best success. And then we'll go to the river and explore and show you exactly where you can expect to find, in most cases, those steelhead. So in this video, stay tuned with us. We're going to go through a little bit of the old school way and a little bit of the new way of how to find these spots in rivers. And I'm going to share a little bit along the way of what I've experienced and how I learned to find my steelhead spots. So when you start talking old school versus new school, you have to look back 15, 20 years. That's when I got started. I was 15 years old. Learning how to fish for steelhead was based upon salmon trout steelheader magazines and walking down the street or driving to Ted's Sports Center, where I could get the information directly from the guys that had the reports. If you can remember back, we got fishing reports from the newspaper, we got fishing reports from our fishing stores directly, and our buddies. So it was kind of a different system back then of more go out and explore and get a little information locally, but a lot of it was on your own, versus now it's a social media fish chase, really. So how I go about this will tell this story. 15 years old, I would walk into Ted's Sports Center and ask the owner, Mike, hey, can I find some areas that will help me catch a steelhead? Now back then, 20 years ago, there's a lot more fish around too. So keep this in mind. Just about every river you could point to on a map had some kind of a steelhead run. Whether hatchery or wild, there were fish around. A little different nowadays, but the same premise stays true. Basically what we were doing, we're looking at maps, the physical maps, and drawing them on pieces of paper to showcase you where to go, where the places were located, and being able to really drive. If y'all remember MapQuest, we'd print these off at home for MapQuest directions to then go find our spots. It has changed a ton, but that old school way of me learning how to go find my location spots, you didn't really have a lot of information on the river gauges. You just had to go and do it. Your experiences of going out there to find these spots, see what the river conditions were, keep notes of that to then go back and know timing, know roughly weather, and how that affects where the fish are going to be and if they're even in the system. It all is important to remember. So one of the biggest things that I took away from that time frame was the time of year, and then where you're going to go after that. Because time of the year is super important to think about. We're in December right now. We're 5 days away from Christmas, which is going to be awesome. But it's hatchery fish time. Honestly, late November used to be the kickoff at Thanksgiving. All the way through January 31st was your peak Puget Sound steelhead hatchery run. You had fish in just about every system, as I mentioned. So it was really easy to go, okay, beginning of the year, I'm chasing hatchery fish. And then as we get later in the season, our wild fish start showing up. Roughly still is the same these days. However, we just have less hatchery fish around, unfortunately. Same with wild, but that's another story. So where I go and fish depends upon that time of the year, because certain rivers hold more wild during later in the season, and some rivers actually have turned their seasons around. I'll use the example of Thanksgiving again. Cowlitz River used to have the best run in our state. Thanksgiving was peak kickoff time. We were all down there chasing fish Thanksgiving to Christmas on the Cowlitz. They have changed and removed that A run altogether, unfortunately. It's now a bee run fish. Late into March, late February, March, and into April is when you're going to start seeing those winter run fish because they started planting them later. You have other systems that do just have a later run stock based upon release smolts. So, what time of the year you're in, that's the first key, okay? The second key is going to be then, how am I finding these spots? Well, old school way, I still have this book from 24 years ago. Okay, this was the Washington Road and Atlas map. Okay, and this was, you can see, well used, but this was my basically Bible for how I found places. I would just look around and see, okay, let's go find a place. Let's go see where the rivers are located, and let's go see what's out there. You had a copy of the printed fishing regs, you'd be able to go out there and see. Now, I'll show up a close-up of this, but essentially, like, here's an example. This is the area over in the western part of our state, the Olympic Peninsula, with Forks, Washington. You can see all the physical rivers that run into that system. You can then know that the Bogus Shield has one of the biggest hatchery runs currently and this time of the year. You would then know, hey, that's probably a good indicator that I might want to go chase hatchery fish out on the coast because it's known for the steelhead, twilight, whatever else as well. That being said, though, truly, the timing of the year and picking your places to go all depends upon that. But that second factor of picking your spot depends truly on one thing that has helped now more than what was available. So old school, we're looking at maps. That's what we're doing. We were map questing from my house all the way out to the coast or wherever it was. That's how you were getting from A to B. Okay, then they became a little more easier to us, where some of these magazines that have been posting articles about fishing places and where to go started compiling them into books like this. Speaking of the Cowlitz River, there's exactly what I'm talking about right there. Maps have already been made in magazines and articles, and if you look hard enough over the internet, you can find this information. It's no longer a secret. It just has gotten lost in how people go and find it. So that secondary way of the rivers and making it worth your time, I'm going to highlight this in a long-winded version of it. You need to know that there's fish in that river. So how do you go about doing that? Well, nowadays, you can go actually look back at the hatchery plant numbers for the smolts. I think this is the most important number to realize how many plants in the last 3 years, maybe you can look at 4, have those rivers been actually getting. If you do a percentage of 1 to 2%, you can kind of gauge roughly what those numbers in return could be, and then you can compare that with to hatchery escapement reports that they post and see how many fish were actually coming back in that same time frame the last few years. You can start to create a log per river on what is actually going to produce returning fish and where you should focus your sights. You heard me use the Cowlitz River. You heard me use some of the coastal rivers. Those I'm only using because they're not a secret, because the numbers are there. The fish are always there because they plant the most out of everywhere else. So you're getting a lot of these numbers that provide instant feedback for you to make sure, am I using my time wisely on the water, or am I going to a system that, hey, they had 100,000 plants 2 years ago, and last year they got 25 because of a lawsuit, or they didn't even get planted altogether. You may not have any fish returning until next year or the year after. So be careful to save yourself the time. That's my number 2, is really doing the research to find out which river systems on a map look really good and are accessible, but then you can confirm that with using the internet to combine old school and new school and be able to help you out there. So that's number 2. Now number 3, okay, you kind of have to just go and do it. You've put all those pieces together to find the locations. Now you got to see what's it actually look like. So again, you now have something in your new school applications. The maps are still useful to plan your trip in advance. But something new school that has ability to outperform that is Google Maps, Google Earth. your ability to look almost like a very good snapshot of something recent of what those areas look like. Is that river even a river anymore in some of the areas if they had other issues with mudslides and whatnot? Or is it going to be something that, oh, that road is even washed out from all the storms? You can do your research to be able to help yourself out with the new school technology to be able to maximize, again, making sure that your best use of your time is being done. It's been hard at times when you don't have any fish returning, but it's even more rewarding in this sense to find spots that you put all the effort into and then know that there's fish around. Steelhead are considered a fish of 1,000 casts. They're not necessarily the smartest thing in the world. They're very aggressive and will bite a lot of things, but you have to find them first. So setting yourself up with these locations, finding where they're going to be in terms of the systems is going to maximize. Then you can take a giant big river and start making it more manageable to isolate the locations. Okay, now I wrote some notes down, so bear with me here. The internet can be a blessing and the internet can be a curse, right? If you see someone reporting to you, we hammered them, it was lights out fishing, everyone starts chasing that report thinking that they're going to show up and it's going to be the same way. Well, that report could have been from a day ago, 2 days ago, the same day, but by the time you're there, conditions change, there's maybe not as many fish, or now there's 100 people on the river because that person put it out there. What I tend to do, if I put all those pieces together, I confirm everything with my locations, the fish counts, and feel good about confidence-wise going to those river picks. I then go and double check the Northwest River Forecast Center from NOAA, and I can confirm river levels. I may not know how that river fishes at those certain different levels, but you can determine if it's fishable or not based on historical data. That again becomes so important to maximize your success. We just had a giant rainstorm 2 days ago. The rivers are going to be just dropping into shape tomorrow into the weekend and Monday. This is a perfect window of 3 days to go out and hit these fish. So I only know that because I'm looking at all of the river gauges around me and I'm seeing where it was at normal level, it spiked up, and now it's coming back to that normal level and on the drop. This is the time, being just before Christmas, to maximize the amount of hatchery fish in any given river system that has a hatchery on it. Got to preface that. But it's important to then just go and enjoy it. You've put all this time and effort to research, to do your due diligence. Now it's time to go put it to action and go see what these fish are going to end up doing. So, if you want to see exactly some techniques, because we're going to have a part 2 showing up, check this out right here, and we'll see you real soon. Fish on!